Hi everybody, I hope you're doing well today. I've got 6 projects today. They are all pretty easy and they're all stash busters for me. So project number 1, I have this vintage suitcase. I've had it in my stash for a long time. I got it for about $5 originally, and it's not in perfect condition. It's got, it looks like it was maybe crushed a little bit, but it's still pretty good. The inside's pretty good. And I'm going to be upcycling this, and I'm painting it with Fusion's Homestead Blue, which I have decided I absolutely love this color. I'm going to be painting my front door with it. I love it so much, and it's a very popular color. I sell a lot of it in my booth, and now I can really see why. I've never used it before, and it's just an absolutely beautiful kind of grayish moody blue. So anyway, I am going over this. It's already a grayish blue anyway, and the Fusion paint sticks to it wonderfully, and it really only takes one coat and a little bit of touch up to do this. And I'm going over the front and the back, and I'm going over the hinges and the handle and everything, making sure they still work. But I'm just doing one coat. I'm not gunking it up, but Fusion paint does a pretty good job of sticking to anything, so I'm not too concerned about that. And we'll be touching this up with some other stuff later. And so now I'm going to go over the back, and it really covers beautifully. And this color, honestly, I just can't believe I haven't used it, but I've sold a lot of it, so now I know why. It's very popular. But anyway, I'm going to go over all of the back, and as you can see, it's covering beautifully. It really only takes one coat. I just go back and, any parts that I miss or whatever, and it dries pretty quickly. And we're going to be adding a transfer to this, and that's one of the reasons I'm using the Fusion paint. I almost always use Fusion, or I will use the mineral paint from Paint Couture when I know that I'm going to be doing a transfer, because they go on so easily with those paints. And when I'm doing flipping or whatever, I'm wanting to do things fast, it's great because I don't have to go through any other steps. So now what I'm doing is I am looking at the Joy de Roses, and these are some leftover pieces that I have, and I am going to go ahead and figure out what I can put on there and where and how big. I only have to trim it a tiny bit at the edge. I'm going to have it look like it's coming off of one side. This transfer set, again, is probably one of my most popular. I can't even keep it in my booth. It has a very vintage antique look to it, and all I'm doing is I'm trimming off a little bit so that I don't want it to go over the sides. I want it to just basically touch the top. And what I will do on this is I will go ahead and just take a very small portion of it, like about an inch, maybe even less than that. And I do this whenever I am putting these transfers down, because I don't like to peel off the whole piece and then try and put it in place, because there's always the danger that you're just gonna drop it down and it's gonna stick in the wrong spot, and then you're stuck with wherever you stick it. This way you have more control over it, and then you just push it down. Now, like I said, this suitcase is a little concave in certain sections. It's still structurally fine, but it's not, I'm sure that this style of suitcase that happened to them a lot. But anyway, I'm just going to put this on, and it transfers very easily on this suitcase. Although I will say, whenever you're doing a transfer, the harder your surface and the more secure it is, the easier it is to transfer it. But when you have a paint with a top coat on it, like the Fusion paint, your transfers just come right off. There's no issues at all. So anyway, I just make sure I start on the edge there, and then I kind of go across, and I just basically do it like you would any other surface, and I go and I transfer it, and I go from one portion to another, and I lift up and I start to see and make sure I got it all down, and if I see anything that I didn't go all the way down, I just go back across. And look how beautiful that is. Isn't that gorgeous? And it goes so well with that color. I definitely am going to have to find a piece of furniture to put this same color combination. If you look at those leaves, it has like a little bit of that color in there. So now I'm going to go ahead and do the other side, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to make sure it fits, and I'm going to cut it. And that's what's great about the IOD transfers, is they've got those lines. It makes it easy. And then I just fold down a little bit, about an inch or so, and I just make sure that I start with that. I press it down there, and then I remove the rest of the backing. And it keeps you from, you know, sticking it down someplace, and because it's a giant sticker, and if it goes in the wrong spot, then you're stuck. And I just go through the same process for the back piece then. So now what I'm doing is I have Extreme Guard in Satin by Paint Couture, and I am going to go over this 2 times with this Extreme Guard Satin. And I'm not going over just the transfers, I'm going over the whole suitcase just for some more durability. You do not have to seal the Fusion paint, it has a built-in sealer, but you do need to seal your transfer after you put it on the Fusion paint. So since I'm doing that, I figured I might as well go over the whole piece, and then that way it gives us even more durability. Anytime I am doing a project that you're actually going to use, I usually put extra sealer on it. And now what I'm doing is I am taking the Pent Art metallic paste wax, and it's gold. And I'm going over the little trim piece that they have that goes all the way around. It goes over the top portion and the bottom, so it kind of frames the whole piece in. And I'm not necessarily trying to be perfect, and I just do one time around, and I do the handle, and I even go back and do the hinges, and I get those, and I'm just touching them up with it. And it doesn't have to be perfect because I'm gonna make this look a little bit vintage and, you know, whimsical. So anyway, I go over the back, and of course all these hinges and locks and everything, they're all working just fine. I made sure, because I really only went over these with one coat, so it's not caked in there so you can't use it. And then I go over it with my Fusion aging wax. You definitely could skip this step for sure. I've already sealed it. There's no reason for me to go over it with wax as far as sealing my transfer. I'm just doing it to kind of blend this together a little bit better, to make it look a little bit more like it's maybe a painting on there. I think this particular transfer itself has a very vintage kind of look to it, an antique-y look to it, but I don't think you can beat the contrast in the two colors, and also the blending. If you look in those roses or the leaves, you'll see that same blue in there, and it's just absolutely gorgeous. So anyway, I just do that all over. I do the sides as well, and that's all I do, and then we're done with it. So I think this turned out really beautiful. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it. I'm hoping that I get to 10,000 subscribers very soon. So make sure you're subscribed if you want to win. And the day that I get to 10,000 subscribers, I'm going to just randomly pick someone, and that's a subscriber, and have a giveaway. And I'm thinking what I may do is just fill this entire suitcase up with just some craft items and have a big giveaway. So anyway, I think it turned out beautiful, and I love it. Just absolutely love those colors together. I'm definitely going to have to do a piece of furniture and put those two together again. So project number 2, I have had this tray sitting around forever. And no, this is not real silver, guys. This is a tin tray. I think I got it for like $2.50. And I knew I wanted to do something with it. I originally, when I started this project, I am using Fusion raw silk. I am using that because I originally thought I was going to put a transfer on here. And then somewhere in looking through my stash of stuff, because this video isn't just about getting rid of the items, I need to start using all of my supplies. I have a ton of supplies. Being a stockist, of course, you end up with a lot of stuff, but I had a lot prior to even being a stockist. So I switch gears, and what I decide to do is, after I go over this with the Fusion Raw Silk, which is great because it does have a primer and a top coat in it to help, my paint stick, I decide to go over it with Farmhouse Linen by Paint Couture. It's a beautiful, beautiful white, and it is just a chalk paint. It does not have a primer or top coat in it, and the reason I'm doing that is because I am going to put an inlay on this. And when I do inlays, I like to use just regular old chalk paint, not mineral paint, not anything with the top coat in it. I feel they always turn out better when I do that, and you'll see later on in the video why I think that. But anyway, after I do one coat over this, because I remember I already had the raw silk on there, I mixed up some salt wash. Salt wash is an additive that you can put on your pieces that give it a little bit of texture. And this is a very, very loose, light texture. I did not add that much salt wash to the paint, and I'm doing that because this is going to get rid of all the brush strokes. It's going to add some texture. It's going to make this look a little bit more vintage in the end. So when I went through my stash, I found an inlay set that is, you can no longer get it from IOD. I do think a few stockists, very, very few, have it, and it is called Melange. It's the first inlay set I ever bought. I love it. And so I am going to put this inlay down. So what I do is I am putting a coat on top of my already dry paint. I'm putting a coat of my chalk paint down. You need it to be wet, and this is a big surface, and I tend to, on a big surface, paint it and then spritz it with a little water to make sure that it's still wet, because on a big surface, parts of it may dry by the time you get done painting it. So I make sure I have a good coat. You want it to be a good healthy coat, but not too much. And like I said, on a big surface, I tend to spritz it, and then I go ahead and I spritz my paint side of my inlay before I lay it down, and then I put it paint side down. And remember, I spritz the paint side, so you do have a little bit of time to reposition it before the paint is activated. And so I get that right on the middle, and I will go ahead and spritz the back of it a little bit. And you want to use a mister bottle, not a spray bottle, because you don't want to put too much water on it. And then what I do is I take a wet wipe, or maybe just a paper towel that's damp, and I go over the whole thing, and I make sure that it is pressed down into the paint. I also mop up any pools of paint, because you don't want too much paint on there, because it'll blur your image a little bit. And I go over the whole thing and just make sure that it is all making contact with that paint. And that is very, very, very important. Also too, if you are looking for an inlay set that has similar topography, look for Gloria. It was released at Christmas. It is really beautiful. It does not look Christmassy. There are some beautiful pieces in there that look kind of similar to this, and you can't go wrong with it. Anyway, I pretty much never wait for it to dry on its own, usually because I'm making a video. But I use my heat gun, make sure it's dry, completely dry, and you'll know that because it'll get opaque, and you won't be able to see the transfer as well. When it's completely dry, you spritz it with water, and you let it set for about a minute after you spritz the back of it. If it feels like it is sticking a little bit like it did with me, I spritz it again, and I wait a little bit longer, because what you're trying to do is get that paint to release. And most of the time when I use just regular old chalk paint, my inlays turn out really, really good. I don't know. It works extremely well, and I just really have not had a lot of luck with paints that have a top coat in it, and you'll see later why that is, but maybe that's just me, but it just seems to work easier when I use just a chalk paint, or even a clay-based paint will work too. That does not have a sealer built in. So after I pull it off, I go ahead and take a dry paper towel or a dry rag, and I mop up any pools of paint. You don't want any pools of paint sitting on it. And after that, you want to make sure it's completely dry before you try and put a top coat or a sealer on it. You don't want it to be wet when you're doing that. Now, I always put one spray of just Rust-Oleum clear top coat on it and let it dry. It just takes a couple minutes. That dries really quickly. And then I go over it and paint on a sealer. I don't ever take the chance of, painting on a sealer. I know some people do. I just don't want to risk it. So I went over it with 2 coats of Paint Couture Extreme Guard, and after that dried, I went ahead and went over the whole thing. This is the back, And I'm using light brown sugar glaze by Paint Couture. I love this glaze. It's wonderful for making things look a little bit more vintage without being overly dingy. And I go over the whole thing, and usually I always spritz it a little bit, and that helps move my product around. It also helps you not use as much product. It is a water-based product, so you can do that. And I'm just taking a wet wipe and I'm wiping off a good portion of this. And this is all on the back, and I'm making sure that I kind of make it look even across there. And I kind of pounce my wipe on there so it doesn't look like it's just strokes all across there, just to give it a nice even finish. So now I'm going to go and do the front, and I pay close attention to the ends and making sure that I put some in there, because I want that to, of course, be the most distressed. And now I'm going to go around the edges, and last I'll go in the middle, and I will go ahead and spritz it. Now remember, we have 2 coats of Extreme Guard satin already on this from Paint Couture, so my glaze is going to just easily wipe off, and I have a lot more control of a glaze or a wax or whatever you put on it after you put that top coat. So I'm going to go ahead and go over that, and then I'm going to wipe it back. Now, one thing I always do, I tend to, when I'm all done wiping everything back, go back in and add a little extra around the areas that would normally accumulate, uh, to make it look more authentically old. Like I'm going around the edges just a little bit, not all the way across, just in little spots. And then what I do is I take my Pent Art metallic gold paste, and I'm going, just putting it on my finger, and I'm hitting the high points around the edges. I'm going to go all the way around. I'm going to do the handles, and then that's it. That's all I do, and this tray is finished. I think it turned out really beautiful, and if you are looking for something similar to this inlay set, definitely look at Gloria. It has a lot of similar typography, French wording. It does have a few Christmas things, but it looks very, very similar. Anyway, I think it turned out really beautiful, and I'm glad that I finally got to use that inlay and got this tray out of my stash. All right, project number 3. This is a set of candlesticks that I had sitting around forever, and they are actually originally quite expensive, but it looks like they're probably from the 90s. It's got that kind of 90s vibe and coloring in it. And the porcelain portion of it, the color doesn't really go with anything. And it's not something I think would sell in my booth. So I've been having them sit around for a while. So I am taking Fusion's Coal Black, and I just mixed it up with some salt wash. I use salt wash a lot because it really, I mean, I think it does amazing things. It's great for when you're going on something slick. I think Fusion, I have had no issues with it sticking, but when you add the salt wash to it, does double duty as far as sticking. I'm using an old brush and I'm stippling my salt wash on. I'm wanting texture on here. I'm doing all of the portions that were in that brown color, and I'm basically just stippling all around, and I'm not doing the Orty black on there. And this cast iron kind of matches it perfectly. Cast iron is probably one of my best-selling colors that I have a Fusion paint. It really does look like cast iron when it's dry. And these candlesticks, basically that color is what it looks like on the rest of it that's already black. And I'm trying to match that as best I can. And I am going to go over this just stippling everywhere, and I'm not worrying too much if I get on the black. I can just wipe it off. It's kind of it feels like it's the same material maybe, but it's not slick. So after I do 2 coats and let it dry, I am taking my liming wax by Fusion, which is really their white wax. If you've not ever tried any of their waxes, they're amazing. This goes on super smooth, buttery, and I just go on and I put that on and I wipe off a lot of it. I did not use a clear coat beforehand because I want a lot of this liming to stay on there. I'm trying to match what is already there on these, and I think I do a pretty good job. I think it ends up looking very similar to it. So here they are. I think they turned out really nice. Definitely a difference from the way they looked before. It looks a lot more updated and something I think I could sell. All right, project number 4. This is actually kind of a redo. This birdhouse I had made before, and I actually did it in a video. I'll try and remember to put it in the description box so you can see that video. I basically just took a birdhouse that I bought from Hobby Lobby, and I just added a bunch of little pieces that I had in my stash, and painted it black, and then I put some milk paint on it, and basically the same thing that you're going to see me do in a minute. So I'm putting some super glue on this just because looks like that piece had broken off, and it's been sitting around forever that I needed to fix it. I had it in a booth, and I guess somebody must have dropped it or something. And then I decided I'm going to update this and add that birdhouse to this candlestick. I've had this candlestick forever, and it's kind of weird. The base of it is kind of lopsided a little bit. I mean, it's like it's not centered on the base. But I thought, well, you know, I couldn't sell it that way, but if I add it to the birdhouse, I think it'll look really good. Nobody will notice, and it'll be a plus. So I am taking that cast iron and that salt wash mix that I already had, that I used on my candlesticks earlier, And I am going over this candlestick. It was kind of a grayish color, and I'm going to let that dry. I'm just doing one coat on there. And now I am taking some milk paint by Sweet Pickens, and this is Flour Sack. And the way milk paint works, if you've never used it, it's a dry substance. You put equal parts water to powder. So I had put 2 scoops of powder. Now I put 2 scoops of water, and you mix it up really well and wait about 10 minutes, which I never ever do, but wait about 10 minutes and it'll get a little bit thicker. I tend to be very impatient, but mix it up really, really well. That's the important thing. And I'm using my brush, and then I realize I probably ought to use a little stir stick and mix it. And it takes a little bit to kind of get all the lumps and bumps out. And then after you let it sit for a while, you just paint it on. And I am not trying to be perfect here. It's okay if the black shows through. And I'm going to paint all of this with one coat of this milk paint. So after I do that one coat, I always try and dry my milk paint with my heat gun. If I want any chipping and cracking, it increases the chances that that'll happen. Usually, if you have a sealed surface, especially over the textured salt wash, it really usually always will do some cracking and chipping. So I'm going over that with my heat gun, and you'll see the cracking as we go. And now I'm going to go ahead and do a second coat. And what's really weird on milk paint, you think, oh, I don't want to cover up all my chipping and cracking and all that. Well, the second coat usually will crack more than the top coat because it's already going to be activated by what's under there. So just don't be afraid to do it, and it'll give it a more authentically old, layered look. You cannot beat milk paint if you are looking for an authentic old look. I don't think there's anything out there that comes close to it. And this stuff sells for me extremely well. And I like it personally. I like that look. So I do go over this when it's done with my Fusion Aging Wax one time to get in all those little crevices and cracks. And then I decide it's not quite doing what I want it to do. I'm telling you, the wax works well, but the oil wax by Sweet Pickens is by far my favorite when I'm using milk paint because it tends to get in all that little tiny, tiny little cracks and crazing better. So it is a wax, but it has an oil consistency. And I think that's why it kind of seeps into those little cracks better. And it will change the paint color quite a bit if you haven't sealed it first. And that's why I put the aging wax on first, because then I kind of sealed it with that. And then I went over the oil wax. It looks shiny when you first take it off. You let it sit for about 10 minutes and then you wipe it off. And it has kind of a shiny look to it, but that dissipates and it becomes completely flat later. But look how beautiful. It goes right into all these gorgeous little cracks and crevices, and I love how it looks when you're done. So now I'm just taking my glue, and I'm going to go ahead and glue this birdhouse to the candlestick. And there you go. Well, thanks for hanging in there, guys. We're on number 5, and this one is super easy, but I love the effect. I'm again going to use milk paint, and I love how milk paint makes things look old, and I like things to look old, so I tend to use it a lot. But anyway, I am using this beautiful color called Kent. It is one of the new Jamie Ray Vintage collaboration colors, the Bespoke. And one thing about all of those colors that you will find, if you like that vintage, really old, look of real antiques, all of these colors definitely, I think there's 6 total. They all definitely look very, old and vintage and antique to me. But anyway, I mixed up just a little bit of this Kent, this beautiful blue color, and I'm going over this breadboard that I had in my stash forever, just sitting there. And I decided I wanted to make something almost Memorial Day, 4th of July. I don't really decorate that way, and I don't do a lot of things 4th of July or whatever, or Memorial Day, but this is my nod to it. So I went over it with one coat, and I am going to use my heat gun, and I did not try and completely cover it. I wanted it to look like some of it had worn off, and I'm going to go ahead and heat dry this, and you're going to see it cracking and crazing a little bit, just because it will do that on this surface, because it has been sealed already with a wax, so it's going to go ahead and crack. It's not like raw wood. Raw wood would just soak it in, and raw wood tends to not have any cracking or crazing. So if you're going to want to do raw wood and you want it to crack, you need to seal it with something first, another paint, a top coat, or something. So after I used my heat gun on it, I'm going to take my little finger sander and I'm going to sand off all of the chippy pieces. And and then I'm going to go around the edges, and I'm wanting this to have a very distressed look to it. That's my goal on this. So I sprayed this with some Rust-Oleum clear coat. I usually like to use a spray on it when it's very chippy like that, because I don't want it to chip off anymore. And also, I'm going to be putting a transfer on it, and if you're going to use a transfer on your milk paint, you need to seal it first. Otherwise, you will have a really difficult, if not impossible, time trying to put that transfer on there. So make sure you seal it first with something. And now I am going to use this transfer, and this is from the seed catalog. And I do have a few of these still left to sell, and I'm trying to finish up this one. And I love this because to me it has very Americana type colors in it, and it just says something about the USA, made in the USA, and whatever. And to me, this is kind of my 4th of July, Memorial Day type of decoration that I do. So now I go ahead and put some of my Fusion aging wax. You do need to always seal your transfers when you're done. And actually I should have waited to do this because there's another step that I do, but it's okay. I go ahead and finish it up. So I go ahead and add that to it. And of course that is going to also highlight all of that chippiness in our milk paint. But what I should have done is I should have waited to put the wax on. I knew I was going to sand this down a little bit. I am going over my transfer and I'm distressing it quite a bit with some sandpaper because I want this to look old and vintage. I've got this very distressed looking paint on the back of that, and it would look kind of funny if I have this brand new perfect looking sticker on there. So I went ahead and sanded it and distressed it, and then I went over it with my Fusion wax again, and then I just added that little ribbon and just a little tie on top, and I love how this looks. And it's very simple. If I were selling it, I would sell it for about $28. All right, you have made it to the end. So this one I thought was going to be an epic fail, and it turned out to be the project I love the most, and that's how things work sometimes because you have to be creative. You have to be, you know, able to switch gears when you mess up. So I had this little breadboard that I had thrifted for about $3, and it had that lamb on it. I actually had it in my booth and tried to sell it. It hasn't sold, so we're going to redo it. And I'm painting it with raw silk by Fusion because I'm thinking I'm going to put a transfer on this. I love using Fusion paint and also the mineral paint by Paint Couture when I'm going to put a transfer. So I go over this with 2 coats to make sure I cover that little lamb. And as you can see, I do not have an inlay out. I have I don't have a transfer out. I have an inlay out. And this is from the new spring release called Portofino. I have not used it yet. Has some gorgeous pieces in there, and I'm actually cutting apart this one big sheet that is in there that will fit on there, and I'm going over this, and this is why I'm going to tell you guys I am using the raw silk by Fusion. I could have gone over it like I did on that tray with the regular chalk paint, but I thought, no, I'm going to give it a try. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just I can't use the top coat type paint when I'm using inlays. Other people do it. So I'm going to try it with the Fusion paint. And don't get me wrong, I love the Fusion paint for certain things. People ask me why I have so many different types of paint, because you use them for different things. They have different applications, guys. Different products do different things. So I go through the same process. I have my wet paint down. I spray my inlay on the paint side. I'm going to lay it down on there. I do everything exactly the same, guys. Exactly the same. So I have it on there. And I had to cut the other pieces. It comes like in one big square and it has a little piece on the bottom, but it was a little bit too big for this piece, so that's one thing great about inlays and transfers. You can cut them apart and make them fit. So I'm putting these pieces on just like I do the others. Alright, I went ahead and sprayed everything with water, and I'm pulling up my pieces, and you know, so far not too bad, but I can tell you what happens with the paint that has a top coat on it. It has like a kind of a latex top coat, and when you re-wet it, and it may be that I just don't have the patience and let it dry all the way by itself. I usually use my heat gun, and that may be a lot of it. I think that is a lot of it, that I'm drying it with my heat gun. So what it does is it lifts off the paint. It tends to lift off the paint more than when I use chalk paint. And I think that's because I'm drying it with my heat gun. And you really should not use your heat gun when you have a top coat. Now see there where it's stretching and it's pulling off the paint? But I go ahead and pull it off, and I kind of smush things and get it back together. It's still messed up, but that's okay because we are going to heavily distress this. When you get an inlay and it doesn't turn out perfect, go with it. Go with it. Because that look can look really great. So what I have done is I have taken some of that raw silk by Fusion and some salt wash, and I am taking a brush and I am stippling it on in different spots. I am going over the spots that were messed up, and I'm creating some other spots that weren't messed up and adding more brokenness to the whole piece so that it all matches. It would look kind of weird if I just had like one or two spots that weren't perfect and the rest of it turned out really well. And again, this didn't turn out terrible, but I have better luck when I use just the chalk paint, and I really do think a lot of it is myself. I'm not letting it dry all the way on its own. I'm using my heat gun, and that may be part of it. So anyway, I go over this, and I go over all the spots I messed up, and I go over other spots, and I cover up some of the inlay that's perfect, so it's not perfect, and I add a lot of this texture in the blank space as well. Now I have gone over this after it was completely dry with 2 coats of clear coat with spray clear coat by Rust-Oleum. Let that dry completely. And now what I'm doing is I am using Pent Art two-step Crackle, and this is the first step. And it has like the consistency of like Elmer's glue, so I'm going over the whole thing with a pretty good heavy coat, and I'm going to cover the whole thing with step 1. And after that dries, and I did use my heat gun a little bit on it too to speed it up, and you'll see it becomes clear. That's when you know it's dry. I've got a couple spots that could be drier, but again, I'm doing a video, so I'm hurrying. I'm putting step 2 on, and you can see it has kind of a, I don't know, a consistency, a brownish type consistency, but that also dries clear. You don't want to let it pool up in spots or anything like that. You want to put it on fairly evenly, but you know, you want to put a decent coat, thick coat on there, but you want to make sure you get it even and it's not pooling up in any areas. And I just cover that completely. I do dry it with my heat gun just because I'm in a hurry, but I don't know if that makes a difference in getting more or less crackle. When I'm all done, I am using a top coat on this, and it is an antique wax by Art. You do not want to use a water-based product on this because I did that before and it messes up really bad. And I think this thing turned out amazing. I love all the crackle. Uh, that Art two-part crackle does a great job. It looks very authentic and very old, and I think all of the distressing work toward its advantage. So let me know what you think. If you are in need of any of these Art, Fusion, Paint Couture, Sweet Pickins Milk Paint, IOD, or decoupage paper, you can visit my website, rehatchdesigns.com. $50 free shipping, $8 flat rate under that. And you do get a discount if you are new of 10% to my website. And if you've enjoyed this video and got something out of it, please subscribe to my channel. I'd greatly appreciate it. It'll also enter you into my giveaway when I hit 10,000. And it really, really does help my channel grow. And it lets me know what you like. It lets YouTube know what you like. It also helps get you videos that you'll like in the future. And I hope to see you guys again soon. Bye-bye. Take care.